boys and girls, it's Miss Lisa here, your art teacher. Welcome back to my table of art. I've missed you all so very much. I believe this is your 4th week in summer camp. I hope you're enjoying my art projects. Remember, if you need any art supplies, please let your teacher know, and she'll let me know, and I could send it to you. So don't forget, if you need anything, please let me know. I want you to be able to do all my projects. Well, I believe this week we're talking all about habitats. I guess that's places that we live, or animals live, or organisms live, or anybody lives, and how they adapt to their environment and live there. But they need some things to live in a habitat, some very basic needs. So let's think about ourselves. What do we need to survive in our habitat? I don't know. I'm so thirsty. Let me have a drink of water for a second. Hold on. I'm so thirsty. What? That's right. We need water to survive in our habitat. That's one of our basic needs. Water. We must have water. What else can you think of that we need in our habitat? Did you have your breakfast this morning? How about lunch? Don't forget we're going to have dinner. Food! We need food! We can't survive without food. So we need water and we need food. I already ate mine, so I don't have any to show you. So that's 2 things we need to survive. Water and food. What else? You know, it's so hot out today. I wish I had something to cover me from the sun. Hey, I do! My house! I could live in my house and have shelter from the sun. Shelter. That's another one of the things we need. Our basic needs to survive in our habitat. Uh-oh. Somebody's cooking food. All better. So we need water, we need food, and we need shelter. Shelter to protect us from that hot sun, and shelter also to protect us from the cold weather and every other weather in between. So that's 3 things that we need to survive in our habitat. I think there's one more thing. We need a place to raise our young. So if I had a little boy or girl, I need to put them someplace safe so nobody could hurt them. And that goes with my shelter. And I need space to let them grow. So I give them their own room. So there's another thing we need to survive in our habitat. What other kinds of habitats do you think there are? I believe you're going to learn all about them this week. But for today, we're going to learn about one specific habitat. It's a really cold one. It's called an aquatic habitat.
Arctic habitat.
And it's where our polar bears live. Do you know what a polar bear is? That's that really big, white, fluffy bear that lives in the cold, cold, cold weather. And he floats on a piece of ice, which is his habitat. It's right. He lives on ice. Can you imagine? He meets all his needs on this one piece of ice. He floats along, and where the cold air meets the land from the sea that he's in, he has his habitat. I made one to show you, and we're going to do this today. So this is what I made. Here's my polar bear. He's floating on his ice. He's a big, fluffy white bear, and it's an Arctic habitat. That's the type of habitat it's called, an Arctic habitat. It's a cold, cold habitat. So let me tell you a little bit more. His food. How does he get his food? Well, he's on this ice over here floating in the water. And if he sees a seal or some fish, he could just reach in and grab them. And And there's his food. If he wanted water, well, he's floating on water. He just has to stick his little nose in the water and go, and he's got his water. And his shelter, this is fine for him. The ice floating separately away from any predators, which there aren't too many predators for this big, big bear. He's safe on this little floating ice home. And what else? Space to raise his young. Well, he can have his babies on this ice. They have done that. But he also has a choice of going on land and building a nest within the ice and snow to raise his young. But as far as space, he has the entire Arctic to float around, go from iceberg to iceberg, floating around, finding food, his water, having his shelter. He's all set. So how about we get all set and start building our polar bear Arctic habitat? Let's go. Okay, but I want you to know something. I'm sending you everything you need to make this project. There are a few things you should have at home. And if you don't, you really need to let me know. You really have to let your teacher know so she can let me know, okay? Tell your teacher if you need any supplies, and I will send them to you. Okay, let's get started with our project. First of all, I want you to know I'm going to be sending you the construction paper. This is the background for our polar bear project. We're going to make it look like there's wind blowing, the cold air. Why does it look cold? We'll get to that later. I'll tell you. And you should know this. So you're going to get the construction paper. You're also going to get what we have for his iceberg. And all that is a little bowl cut in half. You're only going to get half because we only need half for this project. And I'm also going to send you the cotton balls to make our beautiful fluffy bear. And don't worry, I'm going to send you the bear as well, but you'll have to cut him out. If you can't cut him out, have somebody help you, and they'll help you. Remember, teamwork is the best work. And the last thing is Arctic habitat. Do you like how I did that? Arctic looks like the icicles and snow coming down from the word Arctic to remind you how cold it is, okay? So I'm going to position my camera differently, so hang on 1 second. I'll be right back. See you in a sec. Okay, so we're back at the table of art, and I want to show you how to begin our project. So what we want to do first, we want to create the feeling of a cold environment. And using our cool color, blue, we can do that. Now this one here, I used watercolor, but we have other options on how to color the background. But we're going to still use the blue colors, light blue, dark blue, whichever one you choose, because blue represents a cool color. So it gives us the feeling of being cool. So I prepared one of the watercolor ones. This is another watercolor. The background here is watercolor. I used some darker areas and light areas because it gives us a little bit of a depth of our image. Makes it feel like some of the things are closer and some are further away. So I also did one with chalk and crayon. So I want to show you how that came out. This one I did with a blue crayon. And you might find it easier to use a crayon rather than watercolor. This one I used with chalk pastel. And I used 2 different blues to give the different images of depth perception, darks and lights. And you could do the same. But I'm going to show you how to do both the watercolor and the crayon, okay? So what we need to do is get out our watercolors. Now notice I protected my table with a piece of paper. You might want to do that as well, although watercolors clean up very easily. And you're going to need your paintbrush and a cup of clean water. Remember, if you don't have any of these things, just let your teacher know, and I'll get them to you. So we're only using the blue color because that's my cool color. And I'm dipping my brush in there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go right off the paper from side to side. And I'll start at the bottom. Look how dark that came out. So all I have to do now is just add a little water to spread that paint. I don't really want to cover the whole paper. What I really just want to do is leave some white in between because I want to give the illusion that there's other icebergs floating in this water. But I am going from end to end with my brush. Okay, so here is the watercolor. The closer I am, the darker the blue. The further away, like this is in the distance, it's lighter blue. So that gives us the illusion that our image has depth to it. Dark blue, little bit medium blue, and then the lightest of blue, okay? So we're gonna put this aside to let it dry because we really can't do anything until our watercolor is dry. Now let me show you what to do if you want to use a crayon. If you want, oh, let me put this here, I want that to be flat. If you want to use a crayon, let me just clean my brush first and put it away, put my watercolors away. If we clean up as we go, the cleanup at the end will be much easier. Never leave your brush in the water. Remember, bristles are held on with glue, and the water will dissolve the glue and all the bristles will come off and you won't have nothing but a stick left. So make sure that you clean the brush, take it out of the water, either lay it flat to dry or lay it upside down. You don't ever want to lean the brush face down because then you'll just bend your brush and it'll have a funny shape to it and you'll never be able to paint with it. Okay, if we're going to use a crayon, I have a blue crayon and I took all the paper off because I'm not going to color like this. I'm going to lay my crayon flat on the paper and I'm going back and forth with my crayon. Darker on the bottom, and as I get towards the back, I'm going to go lighter. Okay, I'm going to do a little bit more, darker on the bottom and lighter as I reach towards the top. Okay, so this is our crayon version of our Arctic background. Cold, blue, cool color. This is the watercolor one. Okay, I like the watercolor one because you're able to get that darker blue, but I also like the pastel, chalk pastel. I'm going to use the back of the crayon one to show you how a chalk pastel version would come out. Let me get my pastels out. Okay, I'm going to use two different blues because I think it's a beautiful effect. I'm going to take this really light blue and I'm going to take this darker blue to create my cool environment for my polar bear's habitat. All right, so again, I'm going to start with the darker color at the bottom and I'm laying the chalk pastel flat just like I did with the crayon. And it's going to go right across. And I'm going to gently go back and forth until I get to the top. I'm going to switch now over to the cooler blue and just blend that right in with the darker blue. Okay, now this is a really pretty look, but there's one more thing I like to do with chalk pastel. I want to soften it a little bit. And how can I soften that? Well, I'm going to get myself a little piece of tissue and I'm going to, whoopsie, gently rub the chalk pastel together. And this is going to blend it and create a very smooth effect. How do you like that? Isn't that beautiful? So we have our chalk pastel. You can use that. We have our watercolor. You can use that. We have our crayon. You could use that. Whichever you find easiest, I want you to use. Okay, the next thing, we're going to take our half bowl. Now this is a whole bowl, but I'm only sending you half. And all I did was I took this styrofoam bowl and I cut it in half to create the polar bear's ice, which he floats on as a habitat. And we're going to wait till, if it's a watercolor, we're going to wait for it to dry. And when it is dry, what happens with watercolor, it kind of curls up the paper. So we want to try to uncurl the paper if we're going to be using the watercolor. Okay, so it's not so curly. A little bit more on the bottom. Hold on. You're going to curl it the opposite way. And that kind of gets rid of that curled effect. Now we're going to take our glue, and we want to glue just the edge of the half plate. This is the part that's going to go attached to our background. Just the edge. And I'm using my purple glue so you could see how I glue it. Just the edge. And when I glue it onto my paper, but don't worry, this purple glue dries clear, so I don't have to worry if I make a little bit of a mess. I'm going to line it up with the bottom of my paper and stick it on to dry. You see how I lined it up with the bottom of the paper? And I just gently pressed so I know the glue adheres. And I'm going to give this a chance to dry. Okay? So while that's drying, I'm going to pull this one out, the chalk pastel one, another one I did, where it's already dry. So now what happens is this will stand up like a painting because the iceberg reinforces it. All right? So we now have, this chalk pastel I didn't do very dark, but I have the base for my polar bear's habitat. Now let's start building our polar bear. Remember I told you I'm going to send you your polar bear. So you know what you need to do. You're going to have to cut out the polar bear. Be careful. Practice your scissor skills and cut along the dark black line. If you can't cut out the polar bear, see if there's somebody there that can help you. Either they can do it for you or they can do it with you. And let's cut them out. Okay? Try to stay along the black line. And we cut them out. Okay. So I'm going to put my scissor away. I'm going to take my scraps and throw them away. And I'm left with my polar bear. So the next thing we need to do for our polar bear is we need to give him that fur, because that thick, thick fur protects him from the cold. And underneath that thick, thick fur is his skin, which is like leather, and it protects him from the water, so it doesn't chill his body. So he has a lot of body protection from his elements around him. He adapted to these environments of cold and wet. His body has the fur and his skin to protect him. So I'm now going to add some glue to his body so I can add the cotton balls to make him fluffy. So let me put this aside so you can see. Here's my polar bear. I'm just going to put some glue all around his body because now I'm going to add the cotton balls. All right. So here's my first cotton ball. I'm going to put that right there. One right next to it. You're going to get 7 cotton balls, so you have enough to cover your whole polar bear. That's 4, 5, 6. I got one more. I think I'll put it right down here on his leg. 7. Okay, so here we have our big fluffy polar bear. And now what we want to do is we want to put him on the iceberg. We want it to look like he's standing on the iceberg, so we want to make sure that we put him in the right spot. So what we're going to do is we're going to glue his back, okay? Here's my purple glue so you can see what I'm doing. And again, don't worry with my purple because this dries clear. That's why I like this glue. Now I want to put him right on top of this iceberg. There we go. And stick down, press down. And I have my polar bear on his iceberg. Now, what kind of a habitat was this? I forgot. Was it a water one? That's aquatic. No, it's not an aquatic habitat. Sounds like it though. I know what it was. I know what it is, but I can't find it. Oh, it's a Arctic habitat. Because that's where he lives, in the Arctic, where it's really, really cold. And cold is represented by blue colors, cool colors, Arctic. So let's glue the word Arctic habitat onto our project. So one day when you're wondering, what kind of habitat did that polar bear live in? All you have to do is look at your project and remember, Arctic habitat. And there you go, boys and girls. There's your Arctic habitat. Say hello to my little friend, the polar bear. All right, boys and girls, that's it for today. Thank you for coming to my table of art and learning all about the Arctic habitat and the polar bear. Until next week, ciao, ciao for now. See you then. Not sure what we're doing next week, but whatever it is, I'm sure we're going to have fun. Remember though, fun is most important. No stress. If you need anything, let me know and I'll get it to you. So until we meet again, this is Miss Lisa from her Table of Art saying, ciao, ciao. Ciao for now. Bye.